interesting to think of things like that. And, kind of how Michigan derailed Florida's start to the year, kind of unraveled everything, and the way that it unfolded. McElwain parted ways with Florida, ended up getting this wide receivers coach job at U of M. He's going to bring quite a bit of experience. He was the offensive coordinator at Alabama during their little run there at national championships in the I think it was 2011, and one of those other seasons there. So he brings plenty of offensive experience. Did all the play calls there at Alabama during their championship run. Was the head coach of Colorado State. He turned their program around, ended up getting a 10-win season by his third year at the program. Then he got promoted, got the Florida job, and won the SEC East twice, 2 times in a row. I believe that was actually the first time that a new SEC coach ever did that. So he has had some success, especially offensively, developing offensive talent, pretty much at every stop that he's ever been at. So it's going to be interesting. It's something that Michigan definitely needed. They didn't have a full-time wide receivers coach last year, and it definitely showed with the inexperience from the receiver corps, with the struggles from the freshman, Donovan Peoples-Jones. He struggled there mid-season. Nico Collins didn't really get going until the Wisconsin game, Ohio State, and then the bowl game. So I think he's going to bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds as well, just given the youth at the wide receiver group at U of M, and given just all the experiences that McElwain's had, of pretty much all throughout
I think
the
that's the
country
key word, if I may jump in, because we're a little short on time here, Vaughn, but I think you're right. You cannot bring in enough experienced coaching on a staff. And Jim McElwain, just having been named the head coach at Florida at all, even though he didn't necessarily have the record there he would like to have had, indicates his coaching ability and aptitude, and it'll certainly be a big boost, I think, for Harbaugh's staff and for the Wolverines. Von Lozen, read him, follow him on MaizenBrew.com, MaizenBrew.com. That's the Wolverines SB Nation site. Wanted to give a little love to the Wolverine basketball program after taking down the Buckeyes, and good luck against Penn State. Von, we'll check in with you again real soon.
All right, great. Thanks for having me on.
You got it, Von. Von Lozen joining us there, and we're going to stay on the college basketball theme, by the way. Coming up here after the bottom of the hour, local sports center comes your way. Well, normally we shine the light on Toledo and Bowling Green once a week. Head coaches Todd Kowalczyk and Michael Huger. When Coach Huger is unavailable, we talk to the voice of Bowling Green basketball, and that would be Todd Walker. So Todd is going to be joining us after the bottom of the hour, local sports center. After I ask you this question, do you need a new roof? $1 down. Need new siding? $1 down. Need new windows? Just $1 down. Get a new look, your choice, roof, siding, or windows for just $1 down. That's the power of 7 years interest-free. That's right. Do not delay. Call Weather Seal today. Get the roof, siding, and windows you've always wanted for $1 down when you finance for 7 years interest-free. Call this number, 877-WINDOWS. That's Weather Seal. Call 877-WINDOWS. Call 877-WINDOWS or get online at weathersealhomeservices.com.
And welcome back into the Extravaganza. Final segment here on this Tuesday edition. We've been talking a lot of college basketball here in this 4 o'clock hour today. Did Ohio State yesterday, a little Michigan earlier today. Now time to shift gears to the Bowling Green Falcons. Split the week last week, but still in pretty good position overall. 7-7 in the East. The East Division now being clinched by Buffalo, but 16-11 overall. Basically, they're in a 4-way tie at this moment with 2 weeks to play to get a bye straight to the queue for the MAC tournament coming up in a couple weeks. And to help us break all of these things down and so much more, we once again welcome back to the program the voice of the Bowling Green Falcons, Todd Walker, joining us. Good afternoon, Todd. How you doing today?
Hey, Jim, doing well, doing real well.
Excellent, excellent. Glad to hear. So we had a split week, as I mentioned, for the Falcons. They get the win, close win against Western, fell at Buffalo on Friday. Just first, give me your initial thoughts from those couple of games last week. Buffalo obviously clinching the East Division with that win against the Falcons, but that's kind of understandable loss the way Bowling Green, or Buffalo, I should say, has been playing this year. But then earlier in the week, a week ago, getting a nice win against Western Michigan. Break down those games for me.
Well, the Western Michigan game was the third straight home game. The Falcons won while trailing by as many as 15 points at some time in the game. So it was become a rather ho-hum way this team likes to do things, apparently, and that is fall behind in games before coming back to win. But that was a quality win over a good Western Michigan team, and very much a boost for Bowling Green heading into that game at Buffalo on Friday. The Bulls are the best team in the league, and really Bowling Green played with them most of the game, but Buffalo is really good at getting out on the break and a few breakdowns here and there, and they can exploit that, and they were able to do that and ended up pulling away at the end. But I think Bowling Green learned a lot about what it will take to beat Buffalo if they get another chance at them, which they will, to end the regular season. But I thought they played pretty well on the road at Buffalo, and I'd like to see them get another shot and play better when they get them in Bowling Green.
And that game by the bye will be Friday, March 2nd, as you mentioned, Todd, to end the regular season before we head into the Mid-American Conference Tournament. Real quick on both of these games. First, for the Western Michigan game, as you mentioned, coming back from a couple times down 15 in this particular game. And I've asked this from Coach Huger at points this season when there's been a game like that. How important is that? It is to make those kind of comebacks when you're still a younger team? I know Wiggins is a junior, but everybody else is pretty much on the younger scale of things. From your vantage point, your perch, not the head coach perspective, what does it do to a team, a younger team, when they're able to make those kind of comebacks at times during the season, like we saw against Western?
Well, I think it's good that this team will always believe that it can come back, because it's inevitable that, especially in a tournament setting, you're going to get to a point in games probably where you feel like maybe it's getting away from you and your season's about to come to an end. I think this team doesn't really accept that at any point. There's been a number of games this season, as I mentioned, where they've been down and come back to win. That Western game was actually the 7th time this year they've won a game in which they trailed at some point by at least double digits. So, they've won games where their win probability was at 4, 5, 6%. According to the gurus that track that stuff.
Right.
So I think on that side of things, it's good that they have routinely made these comebacks. On the other hand, they've also, while not blown officially big leads to lose, they did have a 15-point lead against Central, end up losing that game. There have been other games this year where they've given away most or all of a big lead and then went on to win the game. So on the negative side of things, I think this team has too many bad stretches that either give up leads or dig big holes, and then they get somehow focused in on what they need to do and turn the game around. I think if you can eliminate or lessen those deep valleys, you can be a much better team in the long run, and that's the challenge moving forward.
We're talking with the voice of the Bowling Green Falcons, Todd Walker, here on the Extravaganza. From a bunch of what you just said, how much would you chalk any of that up, if any, to the whole young team concept? It's a theme in my talks over the course of the season with Coach Michael Huger that this is still a young team, and it is. How much of those things that we were just talking about, though, whether it's giving up the big lead or coming back from the bigger deficit, how much of that could be just attributed to that's what young teams do sometimes?
Well, I think there's certainly a component to that, but I'm also a bit of a believer in, the youth starts to become less of an excuse now. I mean, all these guys have been playing together for this whole season. The team has not really had any major injury problems other than somebody missing a game here and there. And I think it's just about individually, more of these guys have to take responsibility for being on point all the time. I still think that too many guys are not focused at all times, and that's something you have to get over. You can't use an excuse, well, we're young. Well, yeah, you're young, but some of the guys that are losing focus are guys that are sophomores, not freshmen, guys that have played 30, 40, 50 games as collegians, and those excuses, I think, start to wear thin toward the end of this season now with the young component. I think now they've almost forged an identity of being a comeback team, and they simply have to figure out a way to stop doing that. If this team would play the way it's capable of from start to finish, things are going to work out a lot better.
Let's talk a little more about that Buffalo game. You mentioned that there's a possible formula found out in that game, and that the Falcons will have another chance, as you mentioned, at Stroh Center coming up to end the regular season on Friday, March the 2nd. What were those kind of things that we saw in that game that if you're going to play Buffalo, whether you're the Falcons or not, that one can use to beat them?
Well, I think clearly they did some things very well. One thing, they got to the free throw line a ton, which is something that Coach Huger talked about in the time leading up to the game, and they executed that well. They battled them pretty even on the boards, actually had a one rebound advantage, so I think that was good. But the thing that hurt them in that Buffalo game, there were just a few possessions, scattered throughout the game where you let your guard down, either throw up a bad shot that leads to a run out for Buffalo, or you have just a lapse in your transition defense, and you just can't do it with Buffalo. They're too experienced, too consistent, too good, and too deep to have those momentary lapses, even if it's a possession or two, a play or two, a rebound or two. You simply cannot have any letdown. And the fact of the matter is, they had probably 4 or 5 little mini letdowns in that game, and Buffalo converted every single time. That's why at the end of the game, you're down 10 instead of down 3 or down 4 or tied. It wasn't that they got outplayed consistently throughout the game. It's just there were a few key possessions, and when you let your guard down or you throw up bad shots or have a defensive breakdown or just a lack of effort and focus, Buffalo burns you every time. And that's the lesson Bowling Green has to learn.
We're talking with the voice of the Bowling Green Falcons, Todd Walker, joining us here on the Extravaganza. Looking forward to this week, Todd. A couple of games against teams we're very familiar with. The second round through of games against teams from the East. It's Akron tonight at home. That was a loss at Akron earlier this year. And then coming up on Saturday on the road to Kent State. First meeting at Stroh. Falcons beat them. Both teams are kind of traditional powers, if you will, in this conference. But Akron really down this year. And despite the fact that Kent State is in that mix with Bowling Green right now, tied at 7-7 for the in conference play, which is important because one of those teams will end up being that number 4 at this moment in time and go straight to the queue. But they're having a relatively down season themselves. They're under 500. What can you tell us about either of these teams, starting with Akron tonight? And from that perspective, what does Bowling Green need to do a little differently to split the season series here?
Well, Akron, you're right. They're down. Coach Dambrot left, and a lot of the players left with him. This team has been undermanned throughout the season. And really, the first game in Akron, I think the Falcons took them a little bit lightly, and they ended up paying the price. The Zips were able to get a big game from the freshman, Rashawn Cotton, including the game-winning 3 late that turned a 1-point deficit into a 2-point win. I think really the lesson learned from the first game is that, again, you've got to play well the entire game. You can't just kind of coast through. And that was another game where Bowling Green was trailing by 14. Now, they probably should have won the game anyway at the end, but they didn't. You can't keep battling back from 12, 13, 15-point deficits. I think clearly if both teams play well, Bowling Green's the better team. And I think that's what has to show up tonight. You just got to be on point and focused from the beginning and take care of your business. Akron's dangerous, though, shooting the 3, and they attempt the second most threes in the league. They really live and die by the 3. And if you can defend that 3, make it tough on them, you should be able to win this game. And as far as Kent State, it was a barn burner the first time around. Falcons trailed huge in that game as well on their home floor by 19 before storming back to beat Kent State. And really, when you look at that bye, as you have alluded to, right now there's 4 teams tied at 7-7. Bowling Green, Western, Eastern, and Kent State. Now, Bowling Green has combined 4-0 against those teams. They swept Eastern. They beat Western, will not play them again. They beat Kent State. They play them Saturday in Kent. Really, if you look at it, if Bowling Green takes care of business tonight and they win at Kent State on Saturday, they'll be in a very good stead to get that 4th seed, especially if they can then go ahead and win at Ohio on Tuesday. In fact, I mean, I haven't done all the math. I don't know that you could, but I got the feeling if they win the next 3 games, that game against Buffalo to end the season will literally mean nothing for the MAC tournament seeding, because the Bulls will likely have the 1 seed wrapped up as well.
No, and that's such a good point. That's obviously something we're going to keep an